On today's Locked On Texans podcast, Cody and I give our thoughts on why CJ Stroud's success is tied to Bobby Slowick, and thankfully everything is okay with Tank Dell, but we talk about our realistic expectations for him coming up this season.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers stopping by. Come on in, sit down, enjoy the show, and before you cut the TV on, take your shoes off at the door. After you cut the TV on, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you to all of our returning guests coming back, listening, and watching for the 15th, 30th, 45th, 60th time. We really appreciate you. I'm your sports and Texans football analyst, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, one of the most hardworking men in Houston sports media, Texas Credential Media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We all have a competitive side. Mine and Cody is a big fan of Monopoly Go. The Monopoly, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly game. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play.
And on this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans, look, we are officially 48 hours away from the release of the 2024 schedule, but we already know who the Houston Texans will play in 2024. So we're going to take a look at our most anticipated opponents for this upcoming season and a very fun conversation I cannot wait to get into. How much is CJ Stroud's success is tied to Bobby Slowick? But we're going to open up this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans, looking at realistic expectations for wide receiver Tank Dell, and given everything he has gone through over these last 6 months, whether or not we should lower our expectations for Tank. Because as we know, Tank Dell, in the 10 to 11 games that he played, you're looking at a dynamic force that changed the trajectory of the Houston Texans offense. You're looking at a guy in those 11 games, 709 yards, 47 catches, 7 touchdowns. And we already know this team was more explosive with Tank Dell in the lineup than without. In the 11 games that they played with Tank Dell, 307 receiving yards combined for this team, but without him, 209. But prior to the unfortunate event that took place in Florida, we all know that Tank Dell's season came to a heartbreaking end in December when he broke his leg against the Denver Broncos. So, John, Monday, we had an opportunity to hear from Cal McNair and Coach DeMeco Ryans. They did give a positive update about Tank Dell, and this is what they had to say.
It's frightening, but, you try not to get in those situations, and sometimes it happens. And we're just grateful that, I believe no one was seriously hurt, but it looks like Tank will make a full recovery. We saw him in the office the other day, and he looked good in good spirits. And so, but he'll have to rehab and get back to where he was. So.
Yeah, I talked with Tank. We had a good conversation. I've talked to him several times, and Tank will be fine.
So you expect him to be ready for week 1?
Tank should be fine. Yeah, it's the thing about being in the head coach's seat. It's always, you don't know what type of conversation you're gonna get. You know what phone calls you'll get, but for me, it's just always being ready to adjust, always being adaptable with things that may happen, and just being genuine in every situation we have. And for me, as a head coach, I'm always real, upfront, honest with our guys, and that's the communication that's the way I like to keep the communication with our guys. Let them know if anything happens, they can call me with it.
I love that. And when you look at the foundation that DeMeco Ryans has set here in Houston, since day one, and I love when he came in and said the type of men that he wanted to coach and build and grow with, good husbands, good fathers, good friends, good teammates, right? So to hear him say, before I get back to you, it don't matter what's going on. right? Late in the midnight hour, you can give D'Amico Ryans a call with that player-coach relationship because you can trust that he'll be there when you need him to. So I just wanted to point that out that in this league, we've heard stories and we've seen situations where players, and this is the situation where regardless of what happened, you were going to have to call the general manager, the owner, and the head coach, right? But we know that there's situations where players would generally not alert anybody if there's something major going on. But that just seems a little bit different with D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, and everything that you just said, John, that points to the culture of this Houston Texans team, and part of the reason why this team has a strong bond. I mean, we have all seen it, whether you've seen it in the locker room like you and I, or like most people seen it on social media after a victory. The one video that stands out to me is when they beat the Indianapolis Colts to clinch the playoffs. So, that right there is a testament as to why this team is so close knit. But when you take a look at Tank Dell, man, like I just mentioned, man, that young man has been through a lot over the last 6 months. And John, going into this season, when you look at Tank Dell, his expectations for year 2, we are expecting a lot from him. We are expecting him to play a vital role in this offense. Yes, you're going to go out there with Nico Collins. Yes, you're going to go out there with Stephon Diggs. Yes, hopefully, fingers crossed, you're going to go out there and have an opportunity to play alongside John Mechie. And I think if they could get all 4 of those wide receivers on the same page, this offense it's going to be ridiculous. But at the same time, I do want to look at it from a standpoint because Tank Dell has gone through so much, because not only, you heard what Cal McNair said, he's going to have to go through the rehab process and just get back to where he was before all of this. And keep in mind, even though Tank Dell was in the building and working out with the players prior to this situation taking place, but at the same time, he wasn't a full participant. He wasn't a full go. And John, you know me, I'm always going to try my hardest to look at the human element side of things. And I also wonder how much have these unfortunate events also took a toll on him, both mentally and physically. So, we are expecting a lot from Tank Dell, and of course, without a shadow of a doubt, just thank God that everything is good with Tank as of right now. But I'm just wondering, as of right now, should we lower our expectations for Tank? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about a Pro Bowl caliber season, and even though I would love it, I don't think that's going to be the case, at least for this year.
I think this is one of those conversations where it's too early to be had, but based off recent events, also where he was working his way back from to get to, I would say my realistic expectation for Tank is maybe not be ready day 1 of training camp, but I definitely see him getting back healthier and participating in preseason games. I definitely believe that because of the injury and the recent events, which again we're thankful that it wasn't as serious as it could have been. You want to make sure that you give him the time and opportunity to make sure that he's physically and mentally ready on the field. And luckily for Houston, I mean, if you take Tank out of the equation, Nico, Diggs, the 2 young dogs, and Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson, Noah Brown, Steven Sims. They still got some very good players on this roster at that position. Of course, not too many like Tank. Honestly, without Nico and Stephon Diggs, you remove those out the equation, there's none like Tank. But he's a tough kid, man. I mean, his nickname is Tank. He's a tough kid for his size. I think that young man would be back out there. And I think that with the injury that he was fighting back from, combining with the recent shootings, I think it's going to take him some time physically, more so mentally, to get back out there. And that's okay. Like I said, Houston has the bodies in that room to give him that time, where he's not the end-all, be-all to that offense. But realistically, we got to just give him those snaps in the offseason during preseason. All right, before we talk about C.J. Stroud and how we believe his success is tied to Bobby Slowick, I want to let you guys know about Monopoly Go. If you missed it in the opening act, I'm telling you now, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more prizes you unlock. There's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends for complete albums with big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasures. And there's always something new with those timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Do you predict not like us being on the Texans training camp playlist this upcoming offseason?
It's
CJ
definitely
Stroud is from Cali.
no.
It's gonna be on there. Come on,
It's
man.
not going to be on there.
You don't
man.
think not like us when your star quarterback, who's from California, a beat produced by DJ Mustard, with Kendrick Lamar on the beat rapping?
No. If anything, I think Euphoria
You a
would
fan?
be on
You
there
a fan?
before.
You a fan? You a fan? You a fan? You a fan? Yeah, come on, Cody, you
No,
crazy. That's making.
no.
Hey, if it don't make their playlist, when I create my training camp playlist, it's gonna be the first song on that playlist. Y'all can jam it and blast it and go crazy with it. But we're talking about CJ Stroud as the star quarterback. Let's talk about him and how much his success is tied to Bobby Slowick.
Well, of course it's tied to Bobby Sloyd. Like, there's no way it's not tied to Bobby Sloyd, John, because look, the one thing that I love about Bobby Sloyd coming back, not only did it give CJ Stroud another year to learn and develop over somebody he has a relationship with, but to and most importantly, it also gave Bobby Sloyd an opportunity to just come back, learn and develop himself. Because even though, what is it, like mid-season, we really started looking at the success of CJ Stroud, the success of this offense, and the success of the Houston Texans, we started to get a sense, okay, Bobby Sloyd is definitely going to be on a lot of teams' head coaching list for this upcoming offseason, and rightfully so. But the one thing that we kept saying was it would be in Bobby Slowick's best interest to come back and continue learning and developing. And thankfully, that's what they did. But John, it's funny that we're having this conversation now because I saw some people on social media talking about the possibility whether or not CJ Stroud is going to go through that sophomore slump. Would he have a sophomore slump? And I think if he does, that's when we're going to see the hype surrounding Bobby Slowick name die down just a little bit. And I only say just a little bit because not only does he have a prospect and a project here in the city of Houston, but he also has a prospect in a project in a project going on in San Francisco. Because something I've been telling you guys ever since they hired him as his team offensive coordinator, according to sources that I talked to, asking him when I was doing my research about Bobby Slowick, they say the success of Brock Purdy came due to the development and everything he learned from Bobby Slowick.
Right. And I think to clarify this, I think CJ Stroud will be successful long term in his career, regardless of who is going to be his offensive coordinator. At some point, Bobby Slowick is going to move on. He'll be a head coach, but we'll look at CJ Stroud still being successful.
No, but I just want to say, though, why that is true, it is still very important that you keep his core as of right now because he's still so young in this league.
Yes, and then that's what I wanted to get at. This is specifically for year two. And year two is a crucial year for quarterbacks. Everybody is not going to have a year two like Pat Mahomes. In fairness, his year two, his year one, he spent behind Alex Smith, who was already a Pro Bowl quarterback, and he came into the league with Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and a potent offense, right? But everybody isn't going to have spectacular year twos. And we've seen situations where a coach can leave, whether it's a positional coach, whether it's an offensive coordinator. They'll go to another team for another opportunity, and that quarterback who has had success may not be able to replicate that same success. So credit to the Houston Texans for doing two things, keeping both Bobby and Gerard Johnson on this team for this upcoming season. Now, with that being said, I think the development for Bobby Slowick that we want to see, because we definitely want to see development as an offensive coordinator. We want to see things like situational awareness to help out your quarterback. We want to see not being or limiting stagnant moments, which we saw a lot last year for Houston. During that playoff run towards the end of the year, they were having those games, Atlanta, Carolina. You look at the game against you look at the Jacksonville game, you look at that Denver game where they won, but it was kind of like, man, it really shouldn't have been that close, right? You look at those moments, and you had those stagnant moments on the offensive side of the ball where it seemed like it was play calling holding it back. For Bobby Slowick and CJ, and for D'Amico Ryan's sake, we want to see a successful running opportunity for this team, being able to be much better in that aspect. Can't average 3.7 yards on the ground this year, right? So they went out there and they added Joe Mixon to help with that, right? Your offensive line will be healthy. Your guys will be back in their position, right? But when you create successful running opportunities, then that lighten the load on your quarterback, right? And also exploiting matchups every chance you can get. So when you see an offensive coordinator grow in some of those areas, and I think for me personally, excluding creating those running opportunities, when I say that to be more specific, sometimes it ain't just A and B. Sometimes it ain't just East and West. So understanding when to use that power run, that zone run to attack a defense. But of those four things I just mentioned, three of those is a lot with Bobby that you want to see him grow with as an offensive coordinator. I think once he gets to that space in his career as a play caller, as an offensive coordinator, and he can grasp more of the weapons that he has and the quarterback and trust that he has with CJ Stroud, you're going to see a better version of him. And as long as he's doing what he's doing on the sideline, you're going to get a much better version of CJ Stroud. So, like, the success tied to Bobby, again, I think within 2 or 3 years down the line, we may see Gerard Johnson as this team's offensive coordinator, right? And I largely believe that because we know that Bobby's going to leave at some point. Houston did a good job of keeping Gerard Johnson here, right? And they upped his pay. Shout out to The Wash, a California movie, whenever you can find up in a dictionary, but they upped his pay to keep him here, right? Yeah. He's coming back. They got the foundation good for year two, but in terms of the offensive side of the ball and their coaching staff, you just want to see Bobby Slowick get sharper. One, you want to see him go be successful as a coach somewhere else too, right? That can help this coaching tree, and you leave other people to come in and fill in that void, and they'll be prepared and be excited to come to Houston. But overall, you want to see him be better because you know that will impact CJ, it'll impact Schultz, it'll impact Stover, it'll impact Diggs, Nico, Tank when he's on the field, Joe Mixon. That offense will be clicking on all cylinders, and you can tell me if you believe there's a defense in the league that can stop an offense on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, right? When you got Diggs, Nico, Tank, Mechie, those are your four wideouts, and then you got Mixon in the backfield. Exploit those matchups. That's what I want to see this year the most.
I'm glad that we're talking about Bobby Slowick because I've been thinking about for a while, how is Bobby Slowick, how is he going to handle the pressure now? Because even though his name has been respectable for an extremely long time, he was never in the spotlight like he is now. I mean, you take a look at what San Francisco was able to do. He was behind Kyle Shanahan. I just told you guys, there was a lot of people that said that the success that we saw in Brock Purdy, still to this day, it comes from the development and the learning that he did with Bobby Slowick. but that was in the background behind Kyle Shanahan. You come here to the city of Houston, and at least for the first half of the season, especially through the first quarter, nobody knew what to expect from this team. So now it's like not only do they have film on you, not only are you viewed as a potential head coaching candidate for this upcoming season, and maybe this is something we could talk about later on in the offseason, whether or not if he doesn't get another head coaching job, would that be a disappointment on his part? But, because he's at the list of several teams that might be looking for head coaches next offseason, along with John, like you just mentioned, looking at the success of CJ Stroud, I'm wondering how is he going to manage now that the pressure is on him? Because I look at it like this. If CJ go through this second year slump or this offense isn't as explosive as we hoping and projected, he's going to catch a lot of flack. Bobby Sloy is going to catch a lot of flack.
And it does depend on why.
Mm-hmm.
You can drop a play perfectly, but your quarterback just may not hit it on the money. So, when we talk about ties to success, of course, we can talk about long term and CJ being successful. But if Bobby is putting CJ in these more comfortable positions, right? And if CJ isn't delivering, then we flip the script and say, well, how much is Bobby Sloy's success is tied to CJ Stroud and the job that he's doing on the field? Mm-hmm. So year 2 for both of these men would be very important because they brought him back for a reason. They got you weapons for a reason. You got to go out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you got to go out there and execute. So we can have a year where Bobby's just like, I'm doing what I got to do, man. Guys are just not going out there and making plays. I don't think that'll happen too much, but that could be the case.
I get your point, John. I truly do. But I'm telling you, if this offense is, let's say, put it like this, it's going to be a disappointment on his part alone. If this offense doesn't take any improvements from what we saw in 2023. Because the one thing that I would say, you said something that sparked my interest. He now has weapons. And last year, no matter how good CJ looked, a lot of times, whether it was due to injuries or, somebody not stepping up or the offensive line going through that makeshift and all that other stuff, a lot of people kept saying, if only he had the weapons. I mean, look, we're about to talk about the most anticipated opponent in 2024. We go back to that playoff game. What is the number one thing you kept talking about in that playoff loss against the Baltimore Ravens? Yeah, if only if they had Tank Dell, or if not Tank Dell, if they had a more experienced receiver who can get open. Almost everything that we talked about on the offensive side of the ball, whether the rushing attack, offensive line, wide receiving core, it all revolved around Bobby Sloy really not having enough, which, by the way, he did a damn good job using what he did last year anyways. But I'm telling you, John, if this offense doesn't take any step forward, forget, a setback, and which I don't think of a setback and a decline, that's not going to happen. I think these players are too good and too motivated for that. But if we sit here comparing last year numbers to this year numbers and everything is just about the same, that's going to be a disappointment on his part.
And I also want to say this. You add that element of the run game to this offense, which is what Houston really wants. Man, you're looking at the play action playbook opening up, right?
That's what I had in mind.
Limited options there. You throw Kay Stover in that mix, right? You can get creative with him on that field. So I think the key to unlocking both Bobby Sloy and CJ Stroud. And when I say unlock CJ, I mean, he had games last year where it's just like, man, if he was not on that field, y'all getting blew out right now. He had to do it all. I think the key to really unlocking this offense was the same key that helped out in Buffalo, right? The key that helped out a lot of teams, being able to run the ball very well. You cannot have another year where you're running the ball 3.7 yards per carry, 3.8 yards per carry, 2.67 yards per carry. You can't have that. You be successful on that ground. Now you're looking at teams having to respect all elements of an offense. Now you're getting dangerous and explosive offensive play from the Houston Texans. It's winner take all season in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot. Bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in your pocket to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Cody, if you can give us the rundown of the opponents Houston will play in 2024, probably the most anticipated NFL season for this team since their young franchise existence. Let's talk about who's the most anticipated team to play this upcoming year.
For me, I think I'm going to have to go with, and this will only work if they can get this team within the first 3 weeks of the regular season, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. And I say that because I think the Baltimore Ravens will be a great measuring stick as to whether or not the players that they added and whether or not the improvements that the current players have made is enough to get this team over the hump. Because everything that we've been talking about this offseason, everything that fans been debating about, whether on Twitter, in the comment section, y'all doing a good job of that, by the way. Whether what we have been writing, what our colleagues have been talking about, everything that we wanted to see the Houston Texans get better at, all stem from that playoff loss against the Baltimore Ravens, especially looking at Coach D'Amico Ryans that Saturday night and that early Sunday morning vent how the front four has to get better, how the pass defense got to get better, how the rushing attack got to get better, how the fact that this team needs to add more playmakers. He's always went back to that playoff game, which, by the way, is a good thing, knowing that he never got over that. But I just think if they can get the Baltimore Ravens, let's say within those first 3 weeks, I know a lot of people are hoping that this team open up against Kansas City. I don't know why I'm not hoping that. I would love to see this team open up against the Baltimore Ravens for the second consecutive year, because I'm telling you, that is going to be the measuring stick as to whether or not this team improved from the previous year.
That's a great point, and I just want to give the listeners and viewers a little rundown. The 2024 opponents: Colts, Jags, of course, Tennessee, of course, those are the division games. Detroit, Buffalo, Miami, Chicago, Baltimore. And those will be home games. New England, New York Jets, Kansas City, Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings. The Houston Texans have a hell of a schedule. And if you ask me right now, who's the most anticipated opponent this upcoming year, we've been seeing the Texans quarterback go on a world tour. He's been everywhere. He's been talking draft. He's been breaking down plays and how his all-time offense will beat a certain player's all-time defense. They in America. They in China. The H-China caddy, just like Robert Ory. The most anticipated game of 2024 is the game between the two teams in the biggest state in the United States of America. You got Houston Texans versus the Dallas Cowboys. And I'll tell you what, the NFL would be smart to have that game during the week where we're all at home and we all eating and we all drinking and we all on the couch and you got your jersey on, I got my jersey on, and we are enjoying Thanksgiving. But this is why that's the most anticipated opponent. They've already started building it up a little bit. It's already going on. It's you can look at some Dallas Cowboy fans' eyes right now, and it's to the side when you talk about Michael Parsons, because why you ain't doing this with our quarterback and Dak Prescott? You got you got Cowboy fans that don't necessarily believe in their quarterback, and they want a CJ Stroud. But make no mistake about it. where these two teams are right now, how the Dallas Cowboys are put up defensively, how the Houston Texans are set up offensively, that's a clash waiting to happen on the field. And again, this just so happens to be Texas. So you got your college Texas games, you got the UTs versus Baylor or Tech, you got those rivalries, but you got Dallas and you got Houston. That's the most anticipated opponent in 2024. And I'm going to give you two more that may be flying under the radar. For one, the Tennessee Titans game.
Oh, come on. I'm so sick of the Jersey game.
It's not even a Jersey game. I think that's going to be the game to determine, and I think we'll see it throughout the year whenever Tennessee takes on the Colts and the Jags. You're going to look and see, okay, what kind of quarterback room will we have in this division? So that's why I'm looking at it like that. Also, looking how Tennessee did a very good job of giving Will Levis weapons. Gave him some weapons. And I like you say Baltimore, but I'm going to go with Green Bay. We cannot sleep on the Packers. Jordan Love to Green Bay is CJ Stroud to the Houston Texans. It just so happened that they had Aaron Rodgers before that, and Houston had Davis Mills, but everything works out in God's favor. But I think that's going to be a very good game. Houston will take on Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, the monster, the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, one of the GOATs, the second GOAT, Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams.
I'm not putting
that
Caleb
explosive
Williams in
offense
right
in Detroit, Miami. It's going to be a lot of anticipated moments, but I don't think none would be bigger than the Texas Bowl. That's what I'm calling it right now.
I'm telling you right now on
in Jerry World.
And I'm telling you right now on May 6th at 7:00 p.m. Don't do too much on Thanksgiving because we're going to have a show to do. I'm telling you right now.
I'm telling you right now, May 6th, 7:00. If CJ goes out there, 350, 3 TDs.
Hold on to it. Hold it to him.
I'm taking the shot for every time. I don't know, but I tell you what, they beat Dallas. I'm just taking shots regardless.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm scared for that show. Y'all gonna have to pray for us right there. But I would say outside of Baltimore, another opponent that I'm looking at, and we got them 2 times because that's a divisional rival, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Gotta respect that.
The way they collapsed last season, and to know that was the franchise, that was the quarterback that was supposed to be looked at like how the Houston Texans are looked at now, they motivated and they are coming. So, you got to look at Jacksonville, man. And as always, man, I say the Baltimore Ravens.
What are they doing?
What you mean?
You said they are what?
They coming. Oh my goodness. And outside of Jacksonville, I said Baltimore is the measuring stick, but of course you always got to respect the defending champs, and that's Kansas City, man. And depending on, put it like this, I would love to see Baltimore, like I mentioned, within the first 3 weeks. Kansas City, I would love to have them.
That's the monster right there.
Right before the bye week. I would love to have them right before the bye week. And I said that because yesterday when we talked to Coach D'Amico Ryans, he was talking about how excited he was for the schedule release on Thursday. And he said the first thing he do is look for the bye week. And I asked him, what's your preference of a bye week? And of course, as expected, he said the middle of the season because that gives you a fair opportunity to improve on the things that you need to improve on from the first half of the season. And that way you can go on a good playoff run. That's why I say I would love for the Texans to play against Kansas City right before the bye week, because I feel like if you have Baltimore and Kansas City before your bye mid-season, that's definitely going to give D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio, CJ, Bobby Sloyd, and everybody on this team a blueprint on what they are good at and what they need to work on in order to get to where we hope this team can go in 2024.
Thank you guys for listening and watching the Locked On Texan podcast. I want to hear what people feel like the most anticipated game of the year would be. And it's hard to imagine that people are real with themselves and not see this kind of a Texas two-step version of Rush Hour. I'm calling it. You had Rush Hour with Jackie and Chris. Now you got a Texas two-step buddy cop movie brewing here in Houston and Dallas and here in Texas in general between Micah and CJ Stroud. I would love to see them in a nice commercial for the NFL season. But you got the heritage behind that game, the family arguments. Oh my gosh, the family fights. I need to see it all. But please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.